Welcome back. This is part 3 of flipping your lid. In the first video, we talked about a hand model of the brain, and if your brain is calm, everything's integrated and can work together. But as soon as you go on alert, and then to alarm, and then fear and terror, you actually change your neurological state so that you lose some brain function. And you'll actually get to the place you can lose your ability to rationally think and speak, which is why it's often really hard when kids or adults flip their lid. Then in part 2, we looked at what's called the window of tolerance and this model here, noticing that when people are in their window of tolerance, they act differently than when they get outside of that. They'll either go into hyperarousal, where their energy level really goes up, they become like a volcano, or they lose their energy and they go into hypoarousal, which is like an iceberg, or we might say this is like a watchdog, this is like a possum. So today we're going to look at part 3, and that is the 3 R's, which comes from Dr. Bruce Perry. You can look into that more online. There's quite a lot of good articles and things related to this. This is a model of how the brain processes stress and how it interacts with stress. So when you look at these 3 R's, they're regulate, relate, and reason. And the reason this is so important is that a lot of us really don't spend the time in the regulate part. We skip ahead to the relate or the reason part, and that's going to get us into trouble. So you'll notice this model matches up to this one, so that reason and relate only really can occur in the window of tolerance. If you're making demands of somebody to have to relate to you or use their reasoning, and they can't because they're out of the window of tolerance, you're stressing them out more. And that's a lot of why parents or caregivers find that the things they do with kids don't work. A lot of times you're mismatching your approach and what you're targeting. So it just really helps to have these together and to think of that stuff together, so what you can do can actually make a difference and actually be helpful. I have found that so often parents mean very well, caregivers mean very well, and even I've done it. I've meant well, but I've missed it. And I remember a time when I was with a mom and her daughter, and we were all together, and the daughter had a panic attack in the session and was so upset. And the mom's first reaction was just to reach out to her daughter, put her hands on her and say, "Ooh, I'm so sorry, it's okay, are you all right?" And at that time, that kid had really sunk to hypoarousal, so she really couldn't respond to relational demands. She couldn't respond to that kind of question, and she actually came off angry, and I can't remember exactly how she said it, but it was sort of like, "Leave me alone," That feels very stressful. So it's really important that you spend the time on this regulate part first. So let's just take them each one at a time here, talk about how they work and what to do. And see if that makes sense to you. So regulate, that is like when I described it in the other video, it's like your faucet. When you turn your faucet on, you are regulating the amount of water coming through and the temperature. If it's dysregulated, then it's broken. It's not working. So you can't control those things anymore. So when people are dysregulated on either end of this spectrum, they need to be regulated again. So that's getting your lid back on. You really can tell when someone's getting their lid back. So when they lose their lid, you'll be able to tell that. But you can tell it's coming back because they'll either calm down, they're losing their energy and coming back to the middle, or they're gaining some energy. You can see it in their facial expression and their body language. You can see it in their tone. They might smile. When the mood changes, then you're probably getting the lid back on. And once the lid's back, then you can move to these other 2. Regulating can be a couple different ways. So one way would be what we would call co-regulation, and that's you helping someone regulate. So when you have a baby, you have to co-regulate with that baby. They can't regulate themselves. They're just not good at that yet. So they need for us to hold them, and they actually use our nervous system to buffer their own. So they need us to hold them and go shh, and pat their back, or to wrap them tightly, or to bounce them. And that physical stuff or the sound helps them, and even our facial expression helps them to regulate. So they start to come back and they get their lid back and go back to the window of tolerance. So there are some games that you can do to co-regulate with your kids, and I'll show you those in the next video. You can also co-regulate by doing those kind of babyish things that I'm saying. Some kids won't want you to do that, and that's fine. You don't have to, but if kids will let you, if they're young enough and they relate to that, it's great. You can put them on your leg and bounce them. You can hold them. You can do that shh sound and pat them on the back. And some kids respond to that very well. So those are ways of co-regulating. You're helping them. And I found that working with families, a lot of times it helps to start there to help the child start to kickstart their own kind of regulating so they can know even what it feels like to be regulated again. So the other kind is regulating that they do themselves. And that could be a lot of different things. It could be activities that they're doing, like if they're in hyperarousal and they need to lose energy, maybe they go outside and jump on the trampoline, or bounce a basketball real hard, or ride a bike real hard, something to get the energy out. Push-ups or jumping jacks or whatever things they might like. Some kids enjoy wrecking stuff, tearing up cardboard and breaking sticks and smashing boxes and things like that. Those would all be ways to help regulate and to come back down. Now, some kids need to gain energy, and these are all kind of tailored toward what an individual would like the best. So I often just have a whole menu of options for kids to choose, and they can choose their best. Sometimes we make something called a survival kit, where they've already pre-chosen the things they really like and relate to, and then they can decide what they want to use from their survival kit. But kids coming up from hypoarousal might not need to do a lot. Maybe they would just enjoy popping some bubble wrap, or making some drawings, or listening to music, or something that just brings their energy level up gradually. It's not demanding a lot of them. So there's lots of options. But you'll just be paying attention to when it seems like the lid is coming back. And once it does, now you can move to the next parts, and that's relate and reason. But it's still important not to just jump ahead to the reason part. And many times parents will feel like they have to get to the moral of the story. They have to get to the lesson that they've got to teach those kids. But if you do that too fast, they just can't hear you. And you're wasting your words, and actually you're just stressing them out and shutting them down to interacting with you any further. So if you find that you're in this process, you're more focused on when can I get to the lesson, you probably are not tuned in enough to your kiddo to recognize when they're regulated. And I would just either tag out, get someone else in there, or just find a way to slow down so that you really can know. That's a thing we all battle with, that one. So no guilt, no shame if that's happened to you. Happens to all of us. It's going to happen to all of us, depending on if we're in our own window of tolerance. And that's an important thing too for us. So when you do the relate part is a way of reflecting back what you see and hear and causing that other person to feel heard and understood. So maybe let's use an example of a kid who built something out of Legos, and then their younger sibling comes in and wrecks it. Well, if you just went immediately to reason and you said, well, 2-year-olds, they just don't know any better. They just wreck stuff. That kiddo is just not going to be able to stay with you. They're very stressed out by what happened. So first you're going to want to regulate them and do some of those things we talked about. But relating to them might be saying, oh, boy, that caught you off guard. You didn't know that was coming. You're saying what you see or what you think they feel. Oh, you are so mad at that. That surprised you when they did that. And it's your words, whatever you see. You wouldn't want to be condescending about that. You just want to really connect with them. That's hard for you. They came in here and knocked that all down, and you felt mad. So sometimes they'll actually respond, sometimes they won't. And it doesn't matter if they do or if they don't. The idea is you just want to make them feel heard and understood. That's really the goal. I had a session one time where I had a whole family in the playroom together, and a young boy he was just getting really dysregulated, and he was hitting himself in the head and saying, I'm so stupid, and he was having such a hard time, and it was just painful. And his mom was doing the very best she could to relate to that and to say, boy, you're so mad at yourself, and this is so hard. And he just kept sort of stuck in that loop. And so I came over and just sort of put my hand on it and said, try saying what that's like for you. So like, just relate to it, like empathize. What's that like when you're in that place? And she said, sometimes when I'm at work, I just want to disappear and have nobody know that I'm there when I make a mistake. I just wish nobody would see me. And he got up and he went, yeah! And he, for him, he was back in. It doesn't always go that fast. For him, it did. He was sort of waiting for someone to get it, to relate to him, because then it felt safe. He could know, hey, mom gets it. She's safe. My lid can come back, because that midbrain, that limbic system, is looking for safety. So mom showed she's safe, and then the lid came back. So that's the relate part. It's causing them to feel understood and heard, and then any ways that you can relate to that, anything like that that's happened to you and what that's like for you, is a great way to do it. And the last part is the reason part. This is the part we tend to major on, we're good at. I don't think we have a lot of problems there, but watch out in this part, watch out for shame. Shame would make it all reset, and then you got to go back to the beginning, and it's going to be real hard. Shame would be if you're trying to teach them a lesson and it's all about shoulds and that they were bad. That's going to be hard on them. What's I found works a little better in reason is sometimes you can just go back and restate the facts. So we'll take the Lego example again. Boy, you were sitting there building your Legos and minding your own business. You weren't bothering anybody. And then your brother came in and broke them all down. And you were mad. And I even think you were startled by that. I think that really threw you. And they may interact with you some. They may say, yeah, I really was. I was so mad at them. So here what I do a lot of times is, as I'm restating the facts, I might also insert accomplishments that I noticed that they made. So I might say, I noticed when you were mad like that, you probably wanted revenge, and you didn't even get revenge. You didn't do anything back. How'd you do that? And they might not answer. They might say, I don't know. Yeah, you probably don't, but boy, that really stood out to me. That was something else that you could do that way. That was really neat. You don't have to do that. I do it because I want to plant a flag in something that they've gained some mastery in. So if you don't do it, it's still valid to do the reason part and talk through it. I just add it in as a way to affirm what they're doing. I notice you, I see how you're trying to change in this. And that can feel really meaningful in that kind of interaction. So when you're doing reason, a lot of times we think of it as the moral of the story, but you may just be saying the story of what happened. There doesn't have to be a moral in it. Most kids are aware of the moral. If you follow these things in this pattern, you probably will be spending the most time on regulating. You may find that reason can't happen in the same hour and sometimes in the same segment of the day. Sometimes you have to come back to that later. This may take a while. But as you get used to it, you may find that this actually goes quite fast, and you can see kids recover much more quickly than you ever thought. I hope that's helpful. I hope that gives you some ideas of how you can target what's going on when your kids are upset. Just remember how these match up. You can't do reason and relate unless you're in the window of tolerance. So you otherwise have to do regulating first. I will show you some games in the next video that you can use to help regulate, and that will be the conclusion of the Flipping Your Lid series. So I wish you all the best. Hope you're doing well out there. Take good care of yourselves and each other.